Hare Krishna, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Śrīla Prabhupada. Today we will continue our discussion on mantra 14 of the Īśopaniṣad. Sambhutam cha vinasham cha yastat vedu bhayam saha vinashena mrityum tirtva sambhutayam mritum ashnute. One should know perfectly the personality of Godhead Sri Krishna and his transcendental name, form, qualities and pastimes, as well as the temporary material creation with its temporary demigods, men and animals. When one knows these, he surpasses death and the ephemeral cosmic manifestation with it. And in the eternal kingdom of God, he enjoys his eternal life of bliss and knowledge. So this mantra is parallel to mantra 11. Mantra 11, it was mentioned that vidyam cha talpedo bhayam saha avidyam mrityum tirtva vidya amritam ashnute. Right? So vidya has been replaced by sambhutam and avidya has been replaced by vinasham. Right? So in the mantra 14, sambhutam refers to that which is independent. So here it refers to the spiritual world. In the previous mantra, Sambhutam referred to Krishna, and here it's a wider context. Krishna, his abode, devotees. So Sambhutam refers to the spiritual world, and Vinasham refers to the material world, right? And also it refers to Vinasham is destruction of bad qualities. So this is the last verse in the section that compares the various conceptions of the Absolute, right? The Sambhutim and the Asambhutim. So in the last two verses, Īśopaniṣad condemned the worship of the relative, recommending the worship of the Absolute. Mantra 12 had said that the worship of demigods is bad, worship of the impersonal Brahman is worse. Then in Mantra 13, it was mentioned that both the worship of demigod and the worship of Brahman is bad, and recommended the worship of Krishna. And it said that there is only one absolute, which is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Everything else is dependent on him, even the impersonal Brahman. Now in this mantra, Śrī Īśopaniṣad teaches that one must perfectly know both Sambhuti, which is the personality of Godhead, and Vinasha, the temporary material manifestation, side by side. Right? So this verse forces us to do a side-by-side comparison, and then we will see that one is temporary and other is eternal. One is a place of death and the other is a place of immortality. One is full of ignorance and suffering and the other is full of knowledge and bliss. So in the previous verses, the antonyms were Vidya and Avidya. This is in the mantras 9 to 11 and Sambhuti and Asambhuti in 12 and 30. Here, Sambhuti is contrasted with Vinashanam. Right? So earlier on it was absolute and relative. Here Vinashanam is destructible. Right? And then we will see that how even these two are antonyms. So Srila Prabhupada talks about how nothing in this world is, everything in this world is Vinashanam. Right? He says not even science can make the world deathless. Then in third and fourth paragraph he talks about how the Vedas give information about Vinashanam, the death-filled world, and Sambhutim, the death-free world. Then in paragraph 7, 8 and 9 he says about how only by surrender to Krishna can one transcend Vinashanam or death. And finally in the last three verses, 9 to 11, he talks about giving up the misconceptions in order to obtain immortality. So Prabhupada talks about this notion of how the material and the spiritual world are all energies of Krishna. So he quotes the Vishnu Puran, and which is also quoted in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Vishnu Shakti Para Prokta Kshetra Vyakhya Tatah Para Avidya Karma Samgyaya Tritiya Shakti Ishyat. that the internal potency of the spiritual Lord Vishnu is spiritual as verified by the Shastra. Then there is another potency known as the Kshetragya or the living entity. And then even the nations is a third potency that makes the living entity godless and filled with fruitive activity. This is essentially the external energy of Krishna. So this mantra talks about this external energy of Krishna, Vinashanam, right? And the reason that it is called Vinashanam is because it's the world of death. Everything in it dies, right? Prabhupada talks about how even Lord Brahma, the chief living being who lives for millions and millions of years, also dies. And so does a minute germ that lives for some hours too. So no one in the material world can survive eternally. Things are born or created, they stay for some time, they continue to live, they grow, procreate, gradually dwindle, and finally vanish. Right? These are the 6 transformations that Prabhupada talks about. So if you look at the material world, it is filled with 4 kinds of miseries: Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadhi, birth, death, disease, and old age. Right? There are 6 changes, Shadvikar, that are happening: Jayate, Vardate, Sthiti, Viprinamante, then Apakshyate, and Nashati. Right? Birth, growth, maintenance, transformation, decline, and dissolution. Right? And as we discussed earlier, that 1, 5, and 6, which is appearance, dwindling, and dissolution, are there in all forms of matter, right? And are there in forms of matter that is occupied by spirit. Okay, so what else is there in the material world? There are 3 kinds of destruction that are happening: past, present, and future. Okay. So how is the past being destroyed? By the loss of memory. How is the present being destroyed? By wasted opportunities. And how is the future being destroyed? By going to a non-permanent destination. Right? So this destruction is explained by Krishna in Bhagavad Gita 8th chapter verses 16 to 19, and also in the 4th chapter of the 12th canto. He talks about the 4 kinds of destructions. So Naimitic is the occasional destruction. So this happens at Kalpante, at the end of the day of Brahma. Prakritik is complete destruction that happens at the end of the life of Brahma. Atyantik is the absolute destruction, which happens when the jiva goes back to the spiritual world and everything material is destroyed. Nitya is the perpetual destruction that is happening in everything that is material, that is happening at. So this is the 6 changes that in a way is continuously destroying. So what is the impact of this destruction on the jiva? It's an interesting question, that the jiva is surrounded in the material world with so many destructions. How does it impact? Right? And in the Yamraj Yudhishthir Vartalap in Mahabharata, so this is when the Pandavas went to take water from the pond, and Yamraj disguises himself as a yaksha, and he asks Yudhishthir all kind of questions. And one question that he asked Maharaj Yudhishthir is, what is the most wonderful thing within this world? And Yudhishthir replies that ahani ahani bhutani gacchantita yamalayam sheshasthabaram icchanti kim ascharyam ataha param. That ahani ahani bhutani, hundreds and thousands of entities, gachanti yamalayam, that they are at every moment they are dying. Sheshasthabaram icchanti, right? And none of them are despite that, none of them are recognizing the fact that they will also die. So he says, Kim Ascharyam Atah Param. What can be more wonderful than that? Right? That we are all surrounded by death, yet we think that we will not die. So it's not that we don't think we will not die, but we think that we will not die today. We will die somewhere in the future. And when the future comes, we will say that we will die somewhere in the future, which is the same as saying that one thinks that they are deathless. Right? So, why is it that the conditioned soul that is surrounded by death still thinks that it will not die? And this is because of the external material energy of Krishna, which has two potencies. The Vikshep Shakti is the throwing potency, and the Avarna Shakti, which is the covering potency. So by the Vikshep potency, the Jiva is thrown into the field of action and reaction, into this samsara of repeated birth and death. So this Vikshep potency, it creates distractions and desires, because of which the soul is thrown into identification with countless material roles and activities. Now one may say, okay, the soul has been thrown, but once it is thrown there, it sees that it's being surrounded by destruction. Why doesn't it attempt to come out of it? So then the avarna potency comes in place, that once the soul is thrown into the material energy, it gets covered by the ignorance. What is the ignorance? That it forgets that I am the eternal servant of Krishna, but instead it thinks that I am this body, I am independent, and there is no God. So these two potencies of Krishna are the ones that keep the conditioned jiva within the material world, even though it is constantly seeing and even experiencing the miseries of the material world. Every time the jiva tries to exit, it is thrown back. Okay. So we should understand this nature of Krishna's external potency when we are being thrown and when we are being covered. Right? When we understand this nature, then we can see things for what they are. Right? So unless a person recognizes that he is suffering, he will not make an attempt to remediate that suffering. Now, looking at it from a higher perspective, one would say that isn't Maya Devi malicious? She's supposed to be a devotee of Krishna. Why is she so actively throwing and covering an innocent jiva by her potency? So one understanding is that even that is an act of devotion. That if the jiva was to experience only happiness in the material world, then there would be no incentive to want to come back. So Maya Devi sends us suffering to remind us that this is not what it was cut out to be. Right? So while this may not give us an impetus, it does not give us a path to exit the material world, nevertheless it gives us an impetus to search for a way out. Right? So the suffering in the material world may not give us the path to exit the material world, but it will force us to question that is there any way that I can get a permanent solution to this suffering. Right? And that's when one begins to question like that, then one surrenders to Krishna. Devya Esha Gunamayi Mam Maya Durakya. That Krishna says that for those who surrender unto me, this Maya with all its throwing and covering potency can be easily overcome. So Prabhupada talks also about at the time of the death, one worries about three aspects of one's existence: the past, present, and future. And actually, this is one that everybody thinks about it all the time. Right? So one is thinking about what happened in the past, what they are doing now, and how will it affect the future. But at the time of death, this is heightened because the jiva realizes that this is the full stop, at least to this life. So this review of the past, present, and future is done very intensely. Right? So for a materialist, when they think about the past, is filled with sorrow. That my son, my wife, my child, my property, my wealth, all this is going to be, that I have accrued in the past, is going to be taken away from me. So a person is filled with sorrow. the present person is filled with pain. If Prabhupada says death is like 1,000 scorpions biting your body at the same time. Okay, so in the present there is only the pain of death. And future there is fear, because the material does not have understanding of what is going to happen in the future. Right? So it is said that there are no atheists in the foxholes, which means that when there is, people may have philosophical presentation of atheist, but when they are in the battlefield and there are bullets flying on top of them, everybody is praying to somebody. Right? Similarly, at the time of death, even the materialists are worrying about what's going to happen in the future. Even the scientists who say that his body is just a bag of chemicals, even they are worrying what's going to happen to this bag of chemicals in the future. Then a devotee, when he looks at the past, he understands that it is temporary. Right? So all the family that they had, they are relationships that were established because of the temporary manifestation in the material world. When they think about the present, the fact that they're giving up the body, they're thinking this is not my body to begin with. It's not that they don't experience the pain, but they don't experience the pain of attachment to the body. Right? And in the future, the devotees are hopeful that they will get service to the Lord. And for one who is an advanced devotee, right, in the past, they will look at the past and they will say that it's unfortunate that I could not perfect my spiritual life. It's unfortunate that I could not perfect my service to Krishna. Right? In the present, they look upon death as an interruption in the service, which they will continue later on. And for the future, they have this fear of separation from the devotees. Right? So if you look at it, the materialist and the advanced devotees, they are feeling the same things, but different reasons. The materialist is feeling sorrow because of separation of their material things. The advanced devotee is feeling sorrow because I could not serve the Lord sufficiently. The materialist is feeling pain because the body is in pain. The advanced devotee is feeling pain because I was doing my service and it's now interrupted. The materialist is feeling fear about the future, that what's going to happen to me. The advanced devotee is also feeling fear of the future, that will I continue to get association of devotees or not. Right? So they are using the sorrow, pain and fear to make advancements in their spiritual life. So this whole concept of birth and death is regarded differently in the Vaishnava theology and other theology. Right? So in the Abrahamic religions, Christianity, Judaism, Islam, in the scientific model, the concept of time is linear. That the universe is created, primitive life forms appear, they evolve to more advanced life forms, and then there is destruction. Right? And one reason there is a resonance of Abrahamic and scientific model is because essentially they strongly influenced one another. That the Abrahamic religions came after there was some advancement in the scientific model. So there is a fair amount of cross-pollination between the two. The Abrahamic religions absorbed aspects of scientific model and vice versa. The scientific model absorbed aspects of the Abrahamic religions. We see that in the life of Galileo, Copernicus, other scientists who were forced to align themselves to the religious model. And also we see that how the religion itself was changed to comply with the evolving scientific model. So because time is linear, there is only one opportunity to attain perfection. If you don't, you are condemned for eternity. So while this instills a sense of urgency, this is the one life in which I need to perfect myself, otherwise I have no hope. In most cases, it instills a sense of futility, because the process of perfection is gradual. So when the practitioners feel that they are not able to attain this surrender that is demanded, then the urgency gets replaced by futility. Right? And the scientific models, as I mentioned, they kind of mirror this linear aspect. The Vedic model is circular. There is creation, maintenance, annihilation, and then it happens again and again. So there are repeated opportunities for the soul to attain perfection. And so perfection is a process that continues over many lifetimes. Now the disadvantage is it does introduce a certain sense of complacency. Right? Even devotees will sometimes say that not in this lifetime, next lifetime. And Bhakti Sastri would say, don't think like that. Make this your last life. Prabhupada would say again, that make this your last life. So one should not take undue advantage of these repeated opportunities given by Krishna, because then one will get conditioned to taking such undue advantage for eternity. So one will continuously go through this cycle of creation, maintenance, and destruction. But at the same time, it reflects the compassion of the Lord. That if you are not able to perfect it, any spiritual advancements you have made will be preserved, and you can make more advancements. So it gives a lot of hope. Right? So in the linear model, there is a sense of futility. In the Vedic model, there is a sense of hope. And actually, the more evolving scientific models are also subscribing to this cyclical notion, where the universe creates, expands, contracts, condenses, and then again it goes. So the question that the Big Bang is not able to answer is that where does that singularity come from, which then explodes into the universe, and that they are trying to solve by saying that singularity comes from the previous destruction of the universe, and this goes through in a cyclical way. So Vinasham refers to the material world, and the acharyas give some other interpretations to Vinasham. So some of the acharyas say Vinasham is the destructive potency of the Lord. Right? Now it reflects to the material world, but for the devotees it is also the destroyer of bad qualities. And so when one takes shelter of this Vinasham, then one returns to the spiritual world. Right? Also, it is the destruction of obstacles by the meditation on the unfavorable elements. Right? So Mrityum Tirtva, this is the destruction of obstacles by Vinashena, by the destruction of unfavorable elements, which means that the Lord helps a person who is turning towards him by removing the obstacles to the spiritual advancement. So therefore Vinasham can merely refer to the destruction of bad qualities like pride, pretense, violence, thieving mentality, and the function of the external senses. Right? And this also establishes a more parallel correspondence between verse 11 and 14, because there the avidya is varnashram dharma, and because varnashram dharma, one regulatively follows material engagement, and the purpose of that regulative principles is the destruction of bad qualities. So then if we say that mantra 14 Vinasham is thus bad qualities, that parallelism is maintained. So Prabhupada talks about the spiritual world, that the material world is a constant cycle of suffering, and the suffering itself does not give us an answer, but gives us an impetus to find an answer. That answer is in the Vedas. And what is that answer? That is the spiritual world. Right? So that is the Sambhuti of mantra 14. Right? So Prabhupada translates Sambhutim as the eternal personality of Godhead, his transcendental name, form, pastimes, qualities, paraphernalia, etc., etc. So everything to do with Krishna is the Sambhutim, which is spiritual world. So if you only know the material world, there is no desire for anything else. Right? So one says, yes, I'm suffering to the material world, but what's the choice? maybe I'll try to reduce my suffering by piety. But still, that also results in suffering. But when one knows that outside this material world there is a spiritual world, then one gets the real purpose of life. Right? So, instead of then just trying to perfect the material world, one will try to exit the material world. Right? So, this is what mantra 14 is asking us to do. So we should understand there is a material as well as the spiritual world. In the spiritual world manifested by the spiritual potency of the Lord. So some references in 820 that there is another unmanifest nature which is eternal and transcendental. When all this world is annihilated, that remains as it is. So Krishna introducing Arjuna to the spiritual world in Bhagavad Gita 8:20. And then 8:21, he describes it in more details. That which the Vedanta is described as unmanifest and infallible, that which is known as the supreme destination, that place from which, having attained, one never returns, that is my supreme goal. Right? So this is why when one hears these things about the spiritual world, then one can study the material and the spiritual world side by side. And by knowing the suffering in the material world, one develops detachment. By knowing the super excellent qualities of the spiritual world, one develops attachment. So by this pull and push, so one gets pulled into the spiritual world and pushed by the suffering in the material world. That is why one needs to study both of them side by side. So this is the last mantra in the third section of the Īśopaniṣad, and we'll summarize them and also correlate them. Right? So in the ninth mantra, avidya was described as whimsical work done by the mulas and the karmis and the vikarmis, which is karma without jnana. Right? What do they worship? Asambhitam, which is the demigods. Right? So if you combine, so this was the path of avidya. Now vidya in the ninth mantra was Vedavadarata, so the impersonalists, which is Gyan without karma. And the destination of these was given as Brahman in the 12th mantra. Right? Now let us combine the 9th and the 12th mantra. So what is the statement that is made? That those who pursue the exclusive path of karma attain the devas, while those who pursue the exclusive path of Gyan attain Brahman. Right? So mantra 12 talked about the destination, the upasana, who do they worship, who do they attain. Let's look at mantra 10 and 13. In mantra 10, avidya was sense gratification or mundane knowledge or impersonal knowledge. Right? So either practicing karma without gyan or gyan without karma. In 13, the destination was given as anything other than the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which includes the Brahman, the demigods and everything else. In mantra 10, vidya was practicing karma and gyan together, which was vigyan, cultivating the 20 items of knowledge. The destination was given as Krishna. So when we combine it, the statement that we get is, by cultivating knowledge of Krishna, one attains Krishna. By any other knowledge, one attains anything other than Krishna, which is Devas, Brahman, hellish planets, etc. Then in mantra 11, avidya was varnashram dharma. So avidya is that which is not knowledge or activities. Then in mantra 14, the destination of it was the material world, vinashanam, the destructible material world. In mantra 11, vidya was bhakti, and the destination of it was the spiritual world. So when you combine the two, we understand that by the practice of varnashram dharma, one lives successfully in the temporary material world and destroys all bad qualities, and by the practice of bhakti, one attains the spiritual world. Right? So in this 6 mantras, these 3 statements are made, which essentially reveal a successively increasing level of realization and culminates in the attainment of perfection. So the conclusion is that in this mantra, Īśopaniṣad teaches us that one must perfectly know both Sambhuti, the personality of Godhead, and Vinash, the temporary manifestation, side by side. By knowing material manifestation alone, one cannot be saved. For in the course of nature, there is devastation at every moment. Right? But if one knows only material devastation, they may suffer. They may worry, but they cannot be saved. Right? So one can only be saved by the complete knowledge of the spiritual world. And the Vedic scheme is meant to educate men in this art of attaining spiritual life. Prabhupada says people are often disguided by temporary attractive things based on sense gratification. But service rendered to the sense object is both misleading and degrading. So what is the conclusion? We must therefore save ourselves and our fellow man in the right way. There is no question of liking or disliking the truth. It is there. If we want to be saved from repeated birth and death, we must take to devotional service of the Lord. There can be no compromise, for this is a matter of necessity. So this brings us to the end of mantra 14. It also brings us an end to this section which talks about the different paths, the different destinations, and the recommendations over here. So we'll end over here. Hare Krishna. Śrīla Prabhupada ki Jai.